Okay, the light's on? Not yet?
It is on now. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular session of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the city website at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov. The easiest way to locate them is to navigate to the community calendar where tonight's meeting page is posted. If you've not reviewed the agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process we will follow this evening. If you wish to provide public comment, please log into the Zoom meeting or call into the meeting. Instructions for logging in and calling in are located on the meeting page of the city's website. In order to be included in the meeting record, public comments must be received during the applicable portion of the meeting. That is, general comments must be made during the open audience participation portion of the meeting, and comments on specific public hearings or work sessions must be made before the close of the public testimony portion of the agenda items. Next on the agenda is the minutes from the November 10th meeting. Does anyone have corrections to make?
I have a correction.
Please.
In the work session item 6.1, it was stated that I said that I would like to have the ordinance called emergency evaluation / shelter plan. What that should read is emergency evacuation shelter plan.
Okay.
No, without the slash. That's all.
Okay.
One kind of running.
All right. Well, I have some corrections as well in the section on my comments about the code change. I have a few corrections, and so the first sentence in that section should be replaced with these two sentences. Commissioner Massey observed the code change specifically addressed natural disaster self-evacuees bringing their own shelter. While the other issues discussed are important, trying to solve these problems would delay a quick resolution of the issue at hand. And in the original, it just appeared that I was in favor of including all of the other issues in that particular code change. So that's why I want to be specific about my comments. The next three sentences are okay, and I would just ask that the last sentence read, a footprint standard should be used to determine the number of vehicles allowed for a given area rather than a set number for all locations regardless of area. In the minutes, it referred to a footprint of buildings, which I thought was kind of confusing. So at any rate, I will provide these written comments to you, Laura, if that would help. Okay,
yeah, that's great.
Up and I'll just shoot them off. Are there any other comments for the minutes from November 10th, or was it 11th? 10th, I guess it was. Yeah. Okay. So we have some amended comments, and I'll send you my changes, and we'll get those turned around again. So with those changes, I still think that we can ask for a motion to approve them as amended.
I motion to approve as amended.
Okay. Second?
I second the emotion.
Okay, we have the a second for the emotion or emotion. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand so it's easy for me to count. All of the commissioners in attendance were approved. Okay, thank you. So are there any informational items from the staff at this point? Nothing? Okay. So I will ask at this point for audience participation. This is an opportunity to comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda, sort of like general comments that you'd wish to make. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, there will be time for comments after the presentation of the items on the agenda. Do we have anyone who is logged in, Vera, for the meeting?
No, no one has indicated that they wish to speak, and I don't see that anyone has their hand raised to make any comments.
So I will take that we don't have any general comments from the audience at this point. So I will move to the public hearing on PD 2020-001. It's called to order. The purpose of this discussion relates only to the correction to the review process going forward that the Commission initiated this hearing on October 27th, 2020. So I will now ask the city staff to present additional information on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. In the packet, there was a memo to you regarding the action that we've requested, that staff has requested regarding this public hearing review process. What we're asking is that the commission correct the motion that was made at the first hearing on October 27th, specifically to the dates for the review process. What that does is it corrects an issue regarding the way that was originally set out. It didn't account for a new staff report, findings, conditions of approval that would have been brought forward to the December 8th hearing and allowed public comment and testimony on that new information or that new staff report, potentially revised conditions, etc. So what we were asking, as we identified in the staff report, is that we alter that review process. That today would have been the deadline for the applicant's rebuttal. What we're asking is that, we're having this meeting, that we correct the review process. We would still have the continued hearing on December 8th, but that would include written oral testimony regarding the information submitted, up until that point. Then we would include that applicant's deadline for their last written comment, because they're still afforded that opportunity. That would be on December 15th, so they get that 1 week for their final written argument. And then the hearing itself would be continued to January 12th for the commission's deliberation. So that's the request that we're making this evening, that the commission correct that review process schedule as we outlined in the staff.
Would you remind us of when the 120-day clock expires?
The 120-day clock is January 9th. So, so we would need an extension to that clock from the applicant. We would ask that that request be made at the hearing on December 8th, because we can't continue the hearing without that extension. And the extension needs to account for the city council hearing as well. We're sort of the 120-day clock is difficult in a type 4 review process, where you've got 2 different hearing bodies and publication requirements for noticing and that sort of thing. So it makes it extremely tight when we have that situation. And the applicant is aware of the need for an extension to that clock.
Right. So would you share with the commission the outreach actions that you have taken for the community in regard to these changes?
I will, thank you. I should have commented on that earlier. We created the memo. We created a separate memo to all abutters and then interested parties. We emailed that to everyone that was identified as an interested party as part of the hearing process. So anyone that submitted comments, both oral and written, for the October 27th hearing, and anyone that submitted comments in the last couple of weeks as well, were all received an email notice of what happened. We also created hard copy paper notices, and we sent that notice out via mail to all abutters within 400 feet of the property, the same abutters list that received the original public hearing notice. So I'm certain that we've identified everyone that needed to receive notice of this discussion that we're having tonight received that.
Well, I appreciate that outreach, because when we concluded the meeting, I think that folks went away with a certain expectation, and when we had to revise that, I'm glad that we made the effort to go back out and modify those expectations and that kind of thing. So I think that's a good move on the city staff's part.
Sure.
So do the Planning Commission have any questions regarding this matter?
No.
Okay. So does this require a motion and approval, or this was just informational, right?
No, I think it would be a motion and approval, because it was the motion to kind of create the original review process. So, yeah, I think we'd need a motion and approval from the commission to alter that. Yeah.
Okay, to make that unofficial. Okay.
I would like to make a motion to correct the motion made on October 27th regarding the review process for land use application, master file PD 2020-001, and its associated applications.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand if you We're good with that? So
Aye.
easy to count?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All the commissioners in attendance approved. So the public testimony portion of this hearing on PD 2020-001 is now closed. So do we need another motion to continue the hearing to December 8th?
It's already been continued to the 8th. We haven't
Okay.
changed that, so I don't think so. The city
Okay.
attorney's on the call. He can tell me if we
Okay.
need to, but I don't think so.
All right.
We've
Okay.
already continued it to a date certain of December 8th. So we'll stick with that.
Okay, thank you. So the next agenda items are work session items regarding the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Code Audit Update and the Planning Commission Annual Work Plan and Bylaws discussion. I will now ask the city staff to make their presentations.
Okay, so the first one is mine, and wanted to provide the commission with an update on what we've been working on for the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Project. I'm going to confidently share my screen for my presentation, so I'm really hoping this works. Okay. Oh, and I can see that with the TV above me, it in fact is working. So that's great.
We can see it as well.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I wanted to give folks, the commission and folks at home watching this, a sense of what's been happening to date. So right now, activities happening currently. We have a draft of the code audit report has been submitted to staff for review. So we're going through that, and then the code audit report again is the code audit is a detailed code analysis that is identifying any conflicts or issues that we have in our current code or current regulations as related to our policy directive and House Bill 2001, or so our directive for the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Project, talking about creating more housing opportunities in the city, and then related code required for tree preservation and protection, as well as off-street parking requirements. So that code audit is in process. As I said, we're reviewing the draft right now. The report will be submitted and sent out to the CPIC for their packet for their December 17th meeting. So the packet will go out on December 3rd because we've committed to giving materials to the CPIC, to the implementation committee 2 weeks in advance. So we're working on that right now. Consultant and staff have completed stakeholder interviews. And so we've done some information or some interviews with over 30 folks to talk about key livability issues. And I have a slide that summarizes some of that information in a second. We had our CPIC meeting number 3 last week on the 19th, where we talked about middle housing issues. We talked about some introductory kind of key findings about the code audit and some of the barriers that have been identified in the code. And we talked about with the CPIC members, had them share their housing experiences throughout their lives. It was kind of a nice way to listen to the CPIC folks and talk about what kinds of housing or what kind of housing situations or experiences they've had throughout their life to sort of get folks thinking about the different ways or the different types of housing that folks can live in over the time of their lives. The next meeting for the CPIC is the joint meeting with the DLC and the tree board on December 17th, where we'll be talking about initial code concepts. And what that means are sort of the ways or the approaches to talk about the code amendments, but talking about them in a conceptual way as opposed to specific code language. It's a better way of sort of thinking about the different ways and the different approaches we can have in the code project. And then finally, ongoing right now is our first public event, our virtual open house, running from it went live on November 12th, and it closes on November 29th, and that includes an open house, various stations related to housing, tree preservation, and trees in general, and off-street parking. And there's a survey as well. And again, this all is going to close on November 29th. So it'd really be great if folks could participate in that. There's a link to that from the city's City of Milwaukee homepage. All right, just wanted to share some of the key themes that came out of our stakeholder interviews, and the stakeholders included various residents in the city, including NDA representatives. We had a couple of builders and developers on our list to talk to. We talked to some neighborhood activists and advocates, housing advocates, as well as we had some representatives from the schools department, specifically as they relate to their understanding and interactions with families of color and underrepresented communities as well. So we try to get a broad sort of spectrum of folks to talk to, and we asked some questions about housing, about trees, about parking, and various questions like that. Generally, what we heard were people really love the neighborhoods in Milwaukee, and they really love being here in Milwaukee. There was a general acceptance of the benefits of middle housing, but there were concerns that when that housing is built, it won't be affordable. So that's something that folks are thinking about, sort of that idea that middle housing is intended to help with the affordability. And I'll use that term, the small a affordable, so that it's attainable housing, that there are multiple price points for that housing. And so there's some concern that that might not happen. And some concern about design, integrating in the neighborhoods, these various other types of housing like duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in our traditionally single unit dwelling kind of neighborhoods. And then we also heard a desire from folks to be bold in our approach. So to really think about, maybe I'll use the cliche, thinking outside the box a little bit in how we might achieve this balance of what we're trying to get to with this code. So it was nice to hear some of these, I guess I'll call them hot button issues, or these kind of snapshots of ideas of what people are thinking about the project, about these topics. In our outreach to date, specifically related to the virtual open house and the community survey, there was an article in the November pilot. There have been postings on city social media. The school district did social media postings and emails as well, because we directly did some outreach to the high school, to El Puente Elementary School, as well as Rao Middle School. So we had folks so that we could connect with families through the school department. Again, I'll apologize in advance if you've received emails from me multiple times, but so we've done a couple of email blasts to all members on the NDAs, all board and committee members twice. You'll probably get one more this week, just as a final reminder. So that'll be ×3 later this week. And we have several email lists. We have the original comprehensive plan email list. We have a specific project email list for this project. And then we have an email list for folks on our in our BIPOC communities as well. So all of those folks also received email blasts. And then we created hard copies of all materials. We had flyers, and we also created hard copies of all of the virtual open house materials. So all of the stations, we created hard copy information for folks that might not have access to the internet or just aren't comfortable working with internet types of things or web-based things. So we created hard copy packets of the entire open house, including the survey, and we included self-addressed stamped, like paid envelopes to go with it, so folks could mail their surveys back to us and didn't need to spend the stamp. So we created all those materials and had them available at the library, at the Wichita Center. In fact, at the Wichita Center, all of these materials went out in family food boxes. So they were distributed out that way. At the Hillside Manor development, dropped off lots of copies of all of these things. So those were all made available to residents. And then we had materials available at the Holiday Farmers Market on Sunday as well for folks to pick up, including bookmarks. And I do want to say that all of the materials that we've created, both the open house, as well as any of the printed materials and the emails, are all in English and in Spanish. So we've created both translated versions of everything, so that hoping that that a language situation isn't a barrier for folks participating in this process. Some statistics about the virtual open house as of yesterday. So these statistics are of yesterday. So we have 53 completed surveys. We have 260 folks that have visited the main page. 137 who've clicked through the various stations, and then 54 who've provided some kind of feedback, either the survey or actual comments. And then we have the Spanish version of the site. So we don't have folks that have completed the survey yet through the Spanish site, but we've had 25 folks visiting the main page and then 3 folks that have clicked through the stations. So we're hoping that we'll have some more participation over the next few days. We still have 5 days left. So I'm hoping that we'll get some more participation that way. And then on to some of the materials that were that we talked about through the CPIC meeting this last week, when we were talking about something about the code audit, but really the consultants talked to the CPIC members about how they've been analyzing and kind of working through issues in the city, both sort of on the ground, but then through the code, leading up to what the code concept conversation will be. And what they did, and I'm not expecting anybody to be able to read this, I just kind of wanted to show you one of the images from the presentation that they gave, wherein they analyzed each of the neighborhoods to understand existing conditions. So they have these working sheets that they've created of different neighborhoods within the neighborhoods, and talking about their zoning. What are the sort of the predominant lot sizes? What are the street conditions? Really trying to get a sense of what's happening on the ground before we start trying to figure out code changes. We want to understand what's happening on the ground and what's going on within each of the different neighborhoods. They took a lot of pictures and presented sort of understanding, again, what these existing conditions are and what they're looking at. We're thinking about, again, what are some of the housing types? What is happening in the street cross section? Are there sidewalks? Are there street trees? What sort of lot sizes? Are they large? Are they small? Kind of what's happening, again, as I said, on the ground, but from the air, but then also as they were going around. So they drove around and kind of investigated the entire city and all of the neighborhoods within the city, trying to get a sense of what's going on that way. And what this led to were these diagrams where they are thinking about the various kind of contexts within the neighborhoods. Is there a lot of on-street parking? Is there some, available on-street parking? Is there minimal because of, kind of what the street cross section is, or is there enough pavement? Is the right of way paved out so that you can create that on-street parking? What's happening with trees? Are there street trees? Are the trees mostly in private property? Are there not a lot? So looking at tree canopy, and then housing. Or what are the lot sizes? Does it look like, the sort of idea of adding units in these various neighborhoods? Is there room for that? What does that look like? And what they found were that these conditions in all of their various forms are found all throughout the city. There isn't sort of one kind of that, for example, Ardenwald isn't one of these contexts. All of the neighborhoods are all of these contexts. So that when we're thinking about context sensitive kinds of approaches through the code concepts, we're understanding that these concepts need to apply or need to think about these contexts throughout the city. There isn't one sort of representative context in each neighborhood. They're all everywhere. Which was interesting. And I think it's important to understand that when we're thinking about what these code concepts will do and where we're going to be applying them throughout the city. And then in some of their findings, when they were looking at the code, thinking about it from a parking standpoint, some findings and options, thinking about managing parking. looking at the idea of curbless street design. You know, are there some options or alternatives to the traditional street cross section that can help think about both trees and on-street parking. For trees, you know, thinking about, you know, trees on private property is how we're going to get to that 40% canopy. It's unlikely to be street trees aren't going to get us there. So there's going to be a combination of approaches and solutions to how we want to get there. And then for middle housing, really looking at context sensitive forms for different lot sizes and different conditions, and applying to some degree sort of a version of form-based code to be able to really think about what's happening in the neighborhood and how things are integrating and fitting into the surrounding neighborhood. So again, that context sensitive ideas. And then thinking about attached versus detached house types. And so there are multiple things to think about throughout the city, and there will be multiple solutions depending on the context of the surrounding neighborhood. So that makes the way the code is written, it'll be a challenge, but it'll also be very interesting to make sure that it isn't a one size fits all. It's really kind of understanding what's happening around there. So trying to figure out how to make clear and objective standards and clear and objective code for these various conditions. So making it flexible and clear and objective at the same time will be an interesting conversation to have. So we've got some really interesting work ahead of us. So the code audit itself, the report, it'll be about 20 odd-ish pages of sort of a summary report with overall findings and some kind of corrective actions. The idea is to have folks know, both from the CPIC as well as the general public, here's our policy mandate, here are kind of our marching orders as part of this project. Here are the conflicts and the issues with our code. So here's, I'll call it, here's what's wrong with the code, and here are the different ways that we can be answering the questions. So sort of queuing up what we're going to be looking at in the code concepts. And then the appendices will have sort of all of the nerd details, the spreadsheet of all of the various policies and all of the various code sections. So if folks want to get into the weeds, they definitely can. But that summary report is intended to be, 10 pages to be able to let folks know here are all of the issues, and here are the various ways that we can be approaching or thinking about how to address those issues. And then finally, I'll just kind of close with where we are in the general timeline. So again, code language in the summer, final code language in the summer. So right now we're sort of at the tail end of the code audit, and we're sort of in the crux of it for the concept development right now. So community review of those various code concepts will be in the new year. So December 17th is our next meeting. Again, as I said, with the CPIC, with the DLC and the tree board, to start talking about code concepts. Happy to answer any questions that folks have, but I wanted to make sure that the commission is up to speed and up to date on what we've been doing.
Vera, I'm a little bit concerned about the what I would think would be the low numbers. But I don't know what low numbers are on a virtual site like that is. Maybe that's good numbers. I don't know. Is it good? Is it not good?
We're hoping for more. So we're going to be doing another push to get folks, another social media blast, another email blast, trying to get the word out. So it'd be really helpful if folks can spread the word and share emails with folks, social media, that kind of thing. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Commissioner,
I always, send me an email, and then I pops in my head. I had a question though about the trees. Can I move to the trees, or?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So, are there any studies being done on what trees maybe burn faster, or hardwood versus softwood, or branch type or brush type? my concern is just with climate change and with all the fires that we're seeing, and if California becomes more of Oregon's weather, part of the reason that it seems like entire neighborhoods, entire communities burn to the ground there is because if you have a lot of trees with a lot of overlapping in neighborhoods and houses, it spreads like wildfire. So I'm just curious if we have any studies done on, well, these trees maybe are more mossy or carry more water or, whatever, so that they don't burn as fast or they don't spread as fast, or these are, like that would be, I think, just I would just be curious if there's any studies or if there's any recommendation as far as if we're planting or if we're trying to plant more trees in neighborhoods now, what does that look like as our climate does change, especially around here? And we just saw it with the fires recently.
The short answer is that we have, as far as what studies are available, I'm not an arborist. We have 2 arborists on our consultant team, as well as our own city arborist on staff, and the tree board, of course, kind of trying to figure out what are the climate change appropriate species. So we already have a few tree lists from our urban forester on staff that to recommend to folks to plant in their yards that are climate, kind of climate sensitive, or sort of understanding kind of what are the right species as our climate changes. But to the specific question about, balancing tree canopy and wildfire risk, it's a great question. And we'll make sure that that's sort of part of our, overall understanding. It's a good question. Yep. And Commissioner Erd, I'll send an email out to you again, with with the notice. So because I know I know that, you have the Facebook group. And so I was hoping that would have been on there, as well.
I did post it, but
great. Good.
It depends on the time of the day, and I can always do it again. And I can also forward it to a couple other people.
Perfect.
It has to be right in my brain at that moment.
Got it. Okay. I'll get that out to you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Here, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I apologize for not making the meeting the other night, but I'm also, interested, concerned about the amount of feedback. And is there ever a threshold that you set, or a standard that you set, that you've reached so many folks, or that you've gotten a spread across certain spectrums of our demographic here in Milwaukee, that you feel as though, okay, now you can close that public comment period? Or is there a point where you say, hey, look, we're kind of right around Thanksgiving holiday. Folks are already kind of taking on a lot of burden with just COVID and the reality of where we're at right now. Maybe we need to offer more time. I'm concerned that of all of the effort and focus that has brought us to this point in time, I just don't want to look back on a period and say that, shoot, I wish we would have gotten more input. And then for anybody to question how we move forward from this point because of that.
Great question. We were actually asking ourselves that same question earlier today, as far as sort of extending the time. And I think what we'll do is all of this is supposed to close on Sunday, the 29th. So Monday on the 30th, I think what we'll do is we'll pull all the statistics that we have from the survey questions, particularly sort of the demographic and sort of neighborhood, and kind of suss out just first, not even just the number, but who, if we have a sense of who responded by that point. And if we're talking about this at our project team meeting tomorrow to kind of understand kind of what should we do, is it a wait, let's see where we are on Monday. And if we need to kind of, hey, get an extra week or something, we'll do that again. So I think we want to make sure that we have a sort of a useful amount of feedback for sure. So we'll see where we are after we do another social media kind of, concerted effort tomorrow. Email blasts again. I know it's right before the holiday, so we'll see where we get. And if we need to extend it, I would rather have useful feedback and enough of it. And if we need to kind of extend the findings of that survey out a week, I'd rather do that and have useful feedback. So yeah, it's a great question. We were just talking about it today. So yeah, so we'll see where we are tomorrow, but thank you.
I have a question kind of around parking. You know, a lot of it seems to be kind of framed in a on-street versus off-street kind of parking scenario. I would just really love to encourage staff and the consultant team to not just be thinking about the vehicles of today, but also be thinking about the vehicles of the future and the, you know, the massive moves towards zero emission vehicles that are being made by industry and government. And I'm really just kind of raising that as something to think about because a lot of the existing research talks about people charging at home or at work as kind of the predominant things. And, you know, if and where we make shifts towards on-street parking, then I think that starts to beg a lot of questions about charging and where and how do people charge. And these are some things I'm grappling with in my own professional life, but just want to flag that as a topic for us to be, I think, really be thinking of now and trying to get ahead of.
It's a great layer of another thing to kind of add to this sandwich of stuff that we're trying to balance. So thank you, Jacob. It's a great, it's a great point.
I just have a comment as well. And I hope in the boards and committees that we are included the Milwaukee Leadership Academy in that list as well.
I believe so. It was everyone that's on our internal list of everyone.
I didn't know if they were an official
yeah.
board or a committee or something like that. I just want to make sure that they were receiving it as our newest volunteers in the city. They would be great people to get feedback.
I will make sure they're on the next blast if they weren't before. I think I called it the boards and committees, but the way you select it through our thing, I basically figured out I selected everybody. I'm pretty sure they were on it, but I will double check. Thank you.
I apologize. I've seen the two emails in my inbox and probably the other ones as well, but I haven't opened them or read them. I have done the survey. But is there an incentive for any community participation, you know, raffling away a few gift cards or anything like that?
We do, in fact, have fabulous gifts. We
Great.
have some gift cards, so we do have some prizes as well to help incentivize. Yeah, we do. Thank you for asking. All right. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.
Here, there I am unmuted. Yeah. So thanks for that presentation. I think the work plan is next.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody for, I'm happy to be here and actually get to have a conversation with you all because I haven't actually gotten to engage with you yet. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you all. I know it's a little awkward. We don't get that time, you know, up on the dais and before and after and those moments when you kind of get to know each other a little bit better, but this will have to suffice for now. So I'm happy to be here, happy to talk to you all. And Vera's going to run my PowerPoint presentation. So she's going to pull that up for us. And I'm just going to kind of go over, you know, what you all accomplished in 2020. And you can fill in any gaps because, of course, I wasn't here. So I've gathered information. You all did a lot in 2020. And then talk a little bit about what we're going to do, gosh, over the next 5 years, I would say. And then also take a look at the bylaws. And that was the second slide. So we can just skip on to the next one, Vera, because I get ahead of myself. All right. So major accomplishments of 2020. Of course, Vera, you can go to the next one. The first one obviously was the comprehensive plan. That was a really heavy lift for the Planning Commission. I don't need to go through and tell you all of how much work that was and what a great job you did and how many meetings that you had. I think you had over 6 public hearings and also the staff did a lot of outreach over many, many years in order to get to that. So now we can feel like all the work that Vera is doing is coming straight out of all of that work that you all did. So congratulations. I think that's a great thing to have accomplished. And then the next one, apparently there was some concerns from community members about wanting to be more informed about what was going on in the central Milwaukee area. So staff got together and talked about it and put together this webpage so that everything could be put in one place so that people would have more access to information about what was going on. So, and you could sign up to receive notices and information about any projects that were going on in the central Milwaukee area. And then next up was the pre-application information. Folks had also expressed some interest in wanting to know more about pre-apps and when they were coming up, and so that they could see the information on the website. And so we got that up as a tool for talking to neighbors about the pre-application so that they would know what was coming up in their neighborhoods. Then there was a lot of development review that went on last year. You had sorry, I've got a little croak in my throat, a little frog in my throat. You had a subdivision, which was 4 hearings. You had a couple of community service uses. You had a conditional use, you had variance request. You had a planned development that's kind of still underway. And so there was a lot going on in the development view world, and there's going to be a lot coming your way in that world as well, coming up very shortly. So that's kind of just an overview of what happened. And then looking more at the future and the kind of the first phase, you know, there's many phases of implementing the comprehensive plan. And the phase that we're in now. So Vera, the next slide is obviously it's phase 1. Obviously, I don't need to tell you all that. You've got housing, trees, and parking that you're going to be looking at. And then that's slated, of course, as Vera just showed you, to wrap up towards the end of middle of next year. And then phase 2, we're going to move into working on creating the hubs that have been discussed in the past and are part of the comprehensive plan. We're going to look at some of the commercial and industrial designations and maybe try to do some work on those. Pulling together some of the zones and making some adjustments to those. And then we'll also be kicking off the transportation system plan, which will be another multi-year project that will be led by planning, but obviously with our right-hand team being engineering. And so that'll take, that could take up to 2 years. So you all will be involved throughout that process. And then moving into phase 3, we're looking at doing an update to the Willamette River Greenway, updating our historic resources, and also doing an update to our natural resource overlay zone and code. And so then you've also got, in addition to all of the comp plan work that's going to be going on over the next 5 years or so, you've also got some other things starting out. You've got the central Milwaukee bikeways. Vera, that's the next slide. It's the central, so you can see the slide there on the left looking at the bikeways concept. That's something that actually you're going to get briefed on here very soon. So get you up to speed on what's been going on with that. And then also I know that Brett has been working with the DLC to look at the downtown design guidelines. And Brett's going to be taking that back up with the DLC at the beginning of the year and hopefully finishing that off by the end of next year. And so I thought it might be helpful just to pull up, I included kind of an Excel spreadsheet in the staff packet. And so I think Vera's going to pull that up so I can just give you a sense of the timing on everything. And Vera, you've got it, I'm assuming, yeah, working on it. Yeah, so so there you go. Okay, I'm going to lean in a little bit here on my screen. It's a little small. So like I said, looking at the comp plan, finishing up into 2021. Then you've got phase 2, the transportation system plan. We're going to start doing our background work, you know, gathering up, working on a scope and working on an RFQ, and then kicking off the project probably in the fall of 2021. And I see that kind of going through the middle of 2023. We may be able to finish it up sooner, but usually these things take a couple of years. So I just wanted to build enough time in there. The neighborhood hubs starts at middle of 2021, goes through, probably take about a year. Then we'll be looking at, like I said, the updates to the commercial industrial zones actually happening at the same time as the hubs, because it kind of makes sense to put those together. Then the public facilities plan, that's actually being led by engineering, but I'm working with Peter to get a format for that. And so at some point that will likely be coming to you all, but that's why it's in yellow, because it's not a heavy lift for you guys, but it will come before you. Then, of course, a big piece of the work is the natural resources inventory update, looking at the code and based on making everything consistent with the new policies. Again, that's not going to kick off until the middle of 2022. Again, I see it as being kind of a year-long process, because that could impact some people on what they can do on their property. And at the same time, coupling that with the flood protection. And what you'll see down, there's two kind of levels to the flood protection. One is the what's required by DLCD that we have to finish by the end of March or April. They had a model code that we needed to adopt a while ago, but we haven't done that because we were kind of thinking we might be able to address some of the other floodplain issues that came up during the comp plan process. But we've realized that that secondary tier of issues is much larger than this actual update that we need to do for what is required for DLCD. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to address the floodplain in a larger context and how it has to do with the comp plan and the policies that were discussed there. So we'll do that around the same time that we do the natural resources. And then coupled the parks and institution zones with the Willamette Greenway. And then, sorry, I can't see the timing on it, so I'm just going to look at this other one I have. And then moving into, to see, it's spread out a long time. So this is, you've got, it's good to know what's coming, right? So the town center plan, we're going to look at replacing the current town center plan and consolidating plans with the downtown and riverfront and the central Milwaukee plan is two components of the town center plan. And at the same time, we're going to be kicking off the historic resources, and that all starts in 2024. Then there's this other thing that's the urban growth management agreement that we need to work with Clackamas County, and looking at how we're managing kind of the boundaries and our planning areas with the county. And then you've got this whole host of other planning related code and comp plan amendments that we've kind of talked about already. And you can see we've got the we've got a couple of tiers on the emergency shelter and the disaster code that we talked about last time we met, and we're going to break that down in a couple of different sections. But that's coming to you. We're going to look at the sign code, we're going to look at the annexation code, and then there's kind of a list of other things that are led by other departments, but that we will have a role in possibly. So that's what's ahead of you all. And I just wanted to see if that kind of lined up with what you were anticipating based on all the work that you've been doing. And if we you feel like we got it right moving forward. And if I've captured all of the things that you all have known that were kind of lingering out there and that we're going to be moving forward.
So do the commissioners have any questions for Laura on this big work list?
I'm exhausted just listening to this.
Yeah, when she mentioned 2024, I said, "Oh my God, we got to go through another election to boot."
Well, yes. The good news is that it was a shorter time frame, and I stretched it out to give us a little breathing room. So if that helps at all,
I think most of us would appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When Denny left, he gave you a formidable hill to climb, and of course he didn't have to do any of it. So I think you're bringing some reality back into the process here. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are there any other just general comments for Laura? I mean, this is kind of a big deal. I mean, I think it's a lot to take in one a couple of PowerPoint slides, and we'll probably be more informed as we get into some of these things. But I see this as a point of departure. I'm sure we're going to modify things as we go because unfortunately our foresight is not perfect.
Yeah, and we'll have another opportunity. I know it's a lot to digest, but the idea is that January 19th is a joint meeting with the City Council and the Planning Commission. I really hope all of you all can make it. It's scheduled to start at 4:30, and I wanted to see if that was going to be okay with you all. If it's not, why don't you just shoot me an email and let me know, and I can see if I can get the schedule kind of messed around with for the City Council. But that's also an opportunity to kind of talk with them about what's coming. And if there's any more questions between now and then, I'm happy to respond.
Well,
I'm sorry, Laura. Oops, apologize. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you remind me, I'm sorry, so the City Council has not seen or necessarily approved this? Is that right, Laura? Where are we with the approval?
They have not seen this particular version of the work plan, I don't believe, but I know that this is all of the things that Denny knew that was on the docket to get going. So at that meeting, they may shift something, they may say, no, you need to do the natural resources before then. But this is just kind of the understanding I think that Denny had when he left of what the priorities were.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So as the only commissioner that only has about a year and a half left, I'll be going into my 7th year, I believe, in April. So I don't get to see all the way to 2024 on the Planning Commission unless if they change the rules. But this is a broken record for some of you. For some of you that have just joined, this is all brand new. The Milwaukee Museum is willing to be a partner with the City of Milwaukee on their historic inventory list. And we've been saying it now for about 3 years straight. And now that we have a new planning director, I still have a year and a half to say it. So you'll probably hear it periodically. And just to remind everybody that they can go paperless and don't waste staff's time, energy, and the city's money by collecting paper from the staff in the mail. Just wanted to let you know you can go paperless.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner Hemmer. I will keep that in mind, both counts, and I have made a note of it, and I will put it in the tickler file that we're going to get those folks involved.
We already have a list of all houses from 1970 and younger. So.
And then there's also the thing, not to jump ahead, but just because you're not going to be on the Planning Commission doesn't mean there won't be other opportunities for you to be involved. So, that transportation system plan is going to need a steering committee. So just pitching the idea now.
I was hoping that.
Okay, good.
I was hoping there's going to be other opportunities for me.
There will be for sure. So I will definitely reach out to you when we get to that point.
We can always count on Greg to have his oar in the water. Yeah.
That's right.
Laura, thank you. I just had a question for you. Kind of curious about timeline relative to resources and how much of the sequencing is based on kind of like available resources in certain fiscal years. Aside from some of it, I think there's definitely a logical flow. I guess, are there any areas where, should council give the planning department additional resources, you would be keen on trying to like accelerate any of these specific tasks? Or is it pretty how you want it?
Sure. If we had more staff, probably. I think at this point, like, we have resources to do work in the future. We have good consulting budget. Our staff is small, and so we can only get so much done even with outside resources. That's kind of that's the way you see the flow of that, because I kind of looked at everybody's process that I think I have like things can kick off when other things are done, right? So certain max staff will be working at their maximum capacity throughout the entire process, even with the extra resources of consulting funds.
Maybe the second part of that, headcount, aside from headcount, is there anything on here that's like 3 years out there? Like, oh, I really wish we could do that 2 years, in 1 year from now.
Well, don't you always just want to do everything at once if you could? Right? That's the way that works, but we don't get to pick and choose. So it's kind of like, what do we need to start with? What's the most important thing? What's going to drive other things? Kind of be sequential about it. So I feel pretty confident in the work plan right now and the fact that we can get it done with the staff that we have. We have such great staff. And so sure, if I had all the money in the world, I'd move it all up and I'd do it all right now, but that's just not the way it works.
Any other comments about the work session? The work program, should I say?
Oh,
Yes.
Vera, why, yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
Chair Massey.
No, I just wanted to add to Commissioner Sherman's comment about sort of how, so there's a staff capacity thing about just managing all these projects. And I just wanted to underscore that this is the work plan outside of development review. So there are all of those things happening too, development projects and that kind of stuff. So they sort of go hand in hand there. And but there's also kind of outreach fatigue, which we may be already seeing right now during our current open house process. I hope we're not there yet, but I think there's a little bit of kind of alchemy about trying to figure out how to do some of these projects and making sure that we can get the outreach that we need for all of these projects too. And if we start to stack too many things, we're asking people to participate a lot. And so I think I've just wanted to add to sort of kind of how we sort of try to figure out how that's going to work. It's a capacity issue, but it's also just trying to understand what we can ask of the community too, all at once. But so just adding to that, but we're very happy to do whatever Laura tells us. I just want that to be
Vera,
clear.
I just had a new idea for outreach. You all need to come up with a TikTok profile.
Oh my God.
Done.
Well, we have a millennial on the team, so maybe she can help us figure out what that is.
That's what you gotta do. And when you do, I really want to see it because I'll try and.
Right. All right.
Because there has to be a dance. I think that's a requirement.
Is that the requirement? Okay. All right. Well, I'll bring that
Dance
back.
would definitely make some of it more interesting, right? You could play the role of a tree and of a house and like, I don't know.
And a car.
A car. You could
For
do all the
parking.
bits. Yeah, yeah.
We could do that. All right.
I think you only get 15 seconds there, Boomer. You only get 15 seconds, I think, to run your video on TikTok.
Okay, Boomer.
Exactly.
Vera, to your comment about kind of outreach fatigue and maybe taking it slightly serious note, at work, one thing that we've started doing is actually trying to kind of lean more heavily on past outreach we've done. So rather than do new outreach, we've kind of said, what have we done in the past in terms of outreach? Really mining that and synthesizing how it might apply to the current issue at hand, rather than trying to go back out in the middle of a pandemic, reach some of our most underserved community members and those kinds of things. So, I would just maybe encourage you all to maybe think about similar things. Like there was a ton of outreach done through the comp plan process, right? So what do we know from the comp plan process that we might be able to lean on currently, and then based on that, what are maybe the 2 or 3 new things that we might be able to do some targeted outreach on, rather than kind of not reinvent the wheel. Not that you are, but
Right.
I just wanted to share that because I think I found it useful in my own work right now, when as you know, it's really hard to get people's attention. There's just so much going on, and especially as we go into the holiday season, on top of that, it's hard. So just wanted to share that tidbit with you all to think about in your work.
No,
Yeah,
thank you for
that's a really
that.
great point. Yeah, I like that idea because building upon all of we already have a ton of outreach. So it seems like we could go in and do some mining and see if anything would be applicable and useful. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments about the the work plan? I think we're ready to go on to discussion of the bylaws.
Yeah, so Vera, you want to pull the PowerPoint back up for a second? So there have been some discussions, as I understand, about updating or making some revisions to the bylaws. There were two things, as I understand it. One was that the commission would serve as the Community Involvement Advisory Committee until a separate committee is formed by the City Council. So that was one of the additions that we added to the bylaws. And then, and we can talk about that and how that might work. And then the other addition was wanting to add an NDA meeting yearly with the Planning Commission, and just making sure that that was captured in the bylaws so that we were sure that that got done. So those are the two things that we added to the bylaws. And if you all agree with those basically in principle, then we'll also bring those to City Council, and then eventually we'll take it back and have it be adopted in an ordinance. And from what I understand, and this is something that I was thinking about coming back to you all sometime maybe in the spring or in the first quarter of next year, is having a larger conversation about what the CIAC would do and what the role and kind of when the meetings would be and what that would look like, and what I know you've had some conversations about that. So I was thinking that I could kind of propose some outline kind of parameters of what that might look like, and then bring it to you all for discussion and see how you want to move forward with that. And so with that, I am open to questions on both of those ideas.
So commissioners have any discussion on either of those two issues? Yes, go ahead.
Couple questions or comments, I guess. So in discussion about is the acronym CAIC? Community
CIA
Outreach. Yeah.
Community Involvement Advisory Committee. Yeah.
So when there was originally, we had discussion about this, and it came up during the comprehensive plan. There was a lot of feedback that we had gotten from the community on this particular item, and and then there was a lot of discussion also within the Planning Commission about the best way to move forward on this. And there was discussion that the Planning Commission is not necessarily the first or most ideal place for this responsibility to lay. Now, some folks felt that was true. Some folks felt, not so much, but just acknowledging that there wasn't complete buy-in or agreement. And now I see it's a bylaw in front of us. So here we go. There were, concerns about putting that additional responsibility on the Planning Commission, given our load already. There were concerns about kind of ethics of like putting, do we represent the community, and is that kind of a honest and true reflection? It could feel a little bit that we are kind of policing our own. It's not the most equitable way to move forward in the true intent of putting this group together. But I'll just put that out there. So with that said, I'm wondering if, I know that the bylaw is written as though it's temporary, right? Or that the plan, until the council identifies this commission, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering if it's helpful to us that we put some kind of horizon on this, or that we have some kind of point of which in 6 months we check in, or some kind of milestone to make sure this does not just continue to lag on and be part of Planning Commission responsibility. I don't know if you want to discuss that one first and then come back to the second one, because I've also got thoughts on the second one. So I'll just leave it at that.
Let's keep it to one topic, just so that we can flow this. I think this is a good topic, and I think there's other people who want to speak to it as well.
All right, so I'll save my other comment till we get to it.
Okay.
And we'll come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo Vice Chair Loosevelt's feelings on this. From what I remember is that the way that this was brought up was that this is part of goal one, right? And the goal one falls into the planning commission. And I think the discussion around this was, well, what is this committee supposed to do? And if it's supposed to be performing outreach and it's supposed to be reaching out to members of the community, that is not necessarily what the intention of goal one really was. I don't think. I think we expanded out that definition. So I am with Vice Chair Loosevelt that without maybe a definition of what this is supposed to be, or without some sort of sunset of accomplishment that this is supposed to be, it's just gonna fall apart at the seams. I mean, the workload is enough for the Planning Commission, so now you guys got to squeeze in 2 or 3 more meetings with that, and I think it's going to be something that is going to underserve the purpose and the intent of the plan. So I really hope that you kind of, I mean, that is really the background of it, and I hope that we kind of really seriously think about this a little bit more.
So my remembrance of this discussion was that the city council was concerned about trying to stand up a new organization for this, and they were looking for an organization to take this on in the interim, and they felt like the Planning Commission had probably more direct public interface than any of the other commissions, and so they defaulted to that. So which is understandable, but I also like the idea of a sunset clause because otherwise this will just become the way it is. And there's a lot of demands on everyone's time. And so as Laura and I have discussed this, I think that we put some parameters on it that says we will meet a reasonable amount of time to discuss these issues if this is what we need to do. And that might be, I think it's maybe twice a year or something like that. And we try to put it into a light night so that we don't have another time to go to a meeting. In other words, we would adjourn the Planning Commission meeting and roll into the CIAC meeting. But beyond that, I agree. I think there needs to be some definitions about what the CIAC does. Is it, is it a steering committee? Is it a direct interface committee? I think that those are all, good discussion points. But one of the other issues that I think that the Planning Commission was pretty adamant about is that the CIAC was trying to fulfill this requirement, this state requirement, but we didn't feel like, what was required of CIAC was just about land use, and it was more expansive than that. And I hate to make more work for us, but I think that it needs to address those broader issues. But again, if we don't have a sunset clause, then I think it'll just be the de facto way of doing business. And I think that we could do a decent job. I'm not sure we could do a great job because it's something else that we would just have to do.
Let me throw this thought out. And I'm not trying to combine the two thoughts for the second thought process, but maybe the Planning Commission and the NDA leaders are part of the CIAC. And then that way we still have our meeting with the NDA leaders, because I'm assuming that planning staff will not be in charge of the CIAC, that your community development director or the community outreach director, if it's Jason Watts or if it's the other new hire, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but at any rate, right, that this is not going to be under the planning staff's purview to run this. And so maybe if we get the NDA leaders who are out there in the public on board with it until the city can make a new plan, then that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, maybe.
Jacob, I'll get to you in just a second. Laura, do you have a response?
Yeah, I just think I think that there's different ways that these committees are structured. Like I know in Hillsborough, it was the Public Engagement Committee, and they specifically only looked at public involvement plans that were related to actually planning projects. Then in Lake Oswego, they had the Planning Commission, and that was a separate body. They were appointed body. Then in Lake Oswego, they met a couple of times, a couple of times a year if something came to them. So my thought is that we need to understand more, I think, from going back and looking at what was discussed during the comprehensive plan and what the city council is thinking and what you all are thinking as to what exactly this group is supposed to be doing. What is their role? What are they looking at? What is this group talking about? I think that right now is very unclear. So we can't, it's like we don't really know how we want to structure it until we know what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So I feel like there needs to be some discussions about what is at the heart of what this group is supposed to be actually doing. And I don't know if anybody knows more about that from earlier conversations that you could share with me now, or if this is a conversation that we need to have with the Planning Commission when we have our joint meeting. It's like, well, what exactly is this committee doing? And then I could bring some information about what this type of committee does in other jurisdictions. Not that we have to do it that way, but I think we have flexibility to design it the way we would like it to function, because there is a requirement. We have this kind of body, but how and what this body does, I think, is takes direction from the leadership and the community.
So, but to Greg's question, who on the city staff would be the point of contact for?
Right now, I would imagine that point of contact would be us, me, because if it is part of the Planning Commission, then I would imagine that I'm the one staffing it. We haven't had that conversation, but
Okay.
that would be my assumption.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner Sherman.
Thanks, Chair Massey. Being relatively new to this conversation, I would feel pretty uncomfortable, I think, including a bylaw amendment like this, or even if we constrained it until we do get clear with kind of council and others about what we would be doing. And then I think that could then roll more into whether we want to limit the number of meetings, sunset it, those types of things. But I would like us to kind of get better clarity on some of the function before we entertain a bylaws amendment.
And I think that's completely appropriate. So what I can do is kind of capture the conversation that we had here tonight, and then we can bring that to city council to just say, well, we had this conversation, we're not comfortable moving forward with the bylaws as is. We want to have a further conversation with you all about what you're envisioning for this body.
And may I make a suggestion that maybe before we meet, even if we have to push off the date to meet with this, with city council, that you address us in a work session item. And the reason why I say that is that it got really muddled in the water with during the discussion of the comprehensive plan, where people wanted a BIPOC basically committee out of using this line, and there was a lot of discussion that, hey, we need to have a separate group of people to do a lot more community involvement. And so everything kind of got a little muddied in the water, and we just said, we'll let city council kind of work on that. So, so they might have some thoughts and feelings about it. And if we're going to be sitting in a meeting with them, it could, look, I'm going to be on it, and Gamba's going to be on it, and Beatty's going to be on it. So it's going to be a 15-hour discussion. And I know Lauren has to go to bed by 10. So it might be better for them to work out their ideas before we get there to have a massive discussion about it.
Okay, I think that's a point well taken. Let me go back and confer with folks and see kind of how we want to approach this. And I do think, to your point, that it'd probably be good to get some more clarity before we have this larger conversation about, I think that would be a good idea.
I want to second what Greg said, and do your homework, please. And then Greg, and maybe you can help me remember then, so there was one particular planning commission meeting where we hashed this out kind of at length. And I was just trying to remember if we could steer you, Laura, towards that agenda and that evening I would just watch the recording again because it was at length. We went round and round on this. We had quite a bit of suggestions and comments, feedback. It was in one of, yeah.
It was like the first one, it was goal one. And I think everybody's like, oh, well, this is just a check mark kind of one. And so I think that one was kind of considered easy and it turned out to be difficult.
Yeah, that's great.
It turned out to be a lot of discussion. It wasn't difficult. It just turned out to be a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely go back and look at that. I wasn't aware of that, so I can go back and kind of listen to that and see if I can put something together, and then we should just have a larger conversation possibly before we go back. We go to have a conversation.
It definitely seems possible that this could be one of those situations that without really clear definition and structure, this thing could evolve into something it was never intended to be and take way too much time and energy and effort. And so I think, yeah, this kind of process is only going to help us in the end.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I absolutely agree.
And my greatest fear is, or it just gets ignored because it's just too hard for the planning commission to do. And I don't think that's fair. If it's meant to be a community outreach program, I don't think that's fair to the residents of Milwaukee to just ignore it either.
Agreed.
Well, and I think it'll be great too that now we've got our new equity manager on board. He may have some thoughts about how that was set up from where he came from, and if there's some new ideas that he could bring to the table about how we're managing this and what the expectations for the group would be. So I will try to kind of talk to him and learn from his experience, and if he has any advice for us.
Yes, Commissioner Sherman.
Thanks, Chair Massey. If I may, could we pivot to the second proposed amendment, which I know Vice Chair Loosevelt had some thoughts on, but your mention of the equity manager, as I was reading this, I was thinking, oh, this might be an interesting place to not just engage NDA chairs or land use chairs, but also maybe consider writing into the bylaws of engaging the city equity manager in that conversation as well. So I just want to kind of maybe throw that out for discussion.
Okay. So the second, are we ready to go to the second proposed bylaw change? Okay.
All right, so this one just says, it says other duties, at least once a year, the commission shall hold a meeting in which the neighborhood district association leaders have been invited to discuss land use issues and community outreach with the commission.
I thought that was a valuable session, and it was just really a listening session more than anything else, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, my only comment was that is once a year enough? It kind of feels like it should be biannually.
Does anybody else have a feeling about that?
My comment is one thing that used to be written into the bylaws was that we're supposed to meet with the DLC every year as well, which I noticed those are no longer in there, so we tried to meet with the DLC and it always got pushed back and kind of pushed back. And eventually it would happen about once every 18 months or once every 2 years. And what I'm afraid of is that if we make something biannual, that means that it's going to only happen maybe once a year or something like that, because it's hard to coordinate. So I think annually is fine. I think it should have a purpose. I think there should be a subject matter at hand. It shouldn't just be an open wide discussion, but a specific subject matter that maybe the NDAs have raised, or there's a land use issue that connects all of us together somehow, or something like that to give the meeting some purpose instead of discussion. The last one was great because then you guys developed the new project list after the conference thing, which was a big thing that the NDAs were kind of asking for before. And I just think that it kind of got to the point of somebody's attention that, hey, we need to do this. So good things can happen. And yeah, just a meeting with purpose. If we want to do it twice a year, we can do it twice a year. But that just means that we have to have two purposes to meet, I guess.
I guess I'm of the mind that I tend to go for the annual meeting. We can revisit this. I just want to make sure we do what we say we're going to do, and I'm afraid we won't do it if it's a requirement twice a year.
I mean, what if you have the option for twice a year and there's just a vote, the month ahead of time or whatever that you either
Well, we
meet
could
or you don't
say
meet?
the bylaws could say meet as a minimum once a year and on an as needed basis.
Mhm.
Or you could say you meet up to, I guess that doesn't work either. So I was going to say up to twice a year, which that doesn't work. But there's a way to say it that,
We can figure it out. I think we can figure out some language. Okay.
Right. There's a big book of words. I think they call it a dictionary. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So,
I think
go
the
ahead.
idea about Commissioner Sherman's idea about the equity manager, I don't know who else would maybe even the the community development manager, the person that's in charge of the NDAs. At that point in time, I think he sat in the last one. Jason did, and I don't know if he's going to continue on to that role or not. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but the
Okay.
equity manager would be interesting, and even whoever's in charge of is the equity manager in charge of the BIPOC group?
I would
Yeah,
assume
yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, so the ones that are kind of in the loop and the ones that we would be affecting with really reaching out, I guess, about land use issues. So.
Okay.
All right.
So I have one bylaw discussion item that's really more administrative than anything else. Just let me, and Greg knows this, basically when the minutes are approved by the commission, the city staff sends them to me in the mail, okay? And I sign them, and then I send them back to them in the mail. And I'm just a person who likes to remove what I think are unnecessary steps. And so my proposal is basically that once they're approved by the commissioners, they're signed by whoever took the minutes and wrote the minutes, and they're posted accordingly. And that just eliminates paper and postage and I think non-value added steps to the process. And I know that some of the other boards and commissions do this, and I actually looked it up in Robert's Rules of Order, and that's the way they actually say you should do it. They refer to the committee as the secretary who does that. And so that would be my proposal, and that would require a couple of changes to the bylaws to eliminate the chair signing all documents memorializing the commissions, and then adding in a section in the part about the minutes that basically says, upon approval of the minutes by the commission, a staff representative will sign and make available to the public within a reasonable time after the meeting minutes. And I could send those notes to you, Laura, if that is agreed to in principle by the commissioners. Yeah, I mean, we still approve the minutes, but we're just kind of eliminating some administrative steps that I don't think add a lot of value.
And I checked and it's totally fine for us to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one last chance for the work session items. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Lovejoy.
Can we make suggestions for new bylaws?
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, you threw one out, right?
I just rolled one out. Yeah.
I wanted to see some kind of, would you ever consider a bylaw that would somehow make sure that this opportunity to engage the Planning Commission in a virtual way is possible year round, no matter pandemic or not? I want to see these meetings virtually for here on out.
I'd like to discuss that more. I think it's a really interesting thing. I think that the virtual form, even if we were sitting at City Hall at the dais, having the virtual component, nothing against cable access, but there's something about the Zoom where people are actually able to engage, right? We could Zoom somebody in and they can give testimony. I think it is probably going to be more of the way of the future, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this as well.
I agree. Go ahead, Adam.
That's what I want to say. I would like to. I am interested in discussing this further. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think with today's technology, we could have. If there is public testimony, I certainly want to be on the diocese. I think it's rude not to be there when somebody comes to speak. And that's just me, right? We're supposed to be here for the people that want to come to talk to us and not see us virtually. But with that, I don't see any reason why one TV screen can't be Zoom, so that the members that don't want to sit on, come into the plane. Let's say it's snowing outside and, we're going to cancel everything. Well, boom, then we can just run it through Zoom. Well, there might be meeting notice problems, but at least if it's always announced on Zoom, people can join by Zoom. We can have one TV with Zoom. We can still have Willamette Falls TV, tape it, or the Milwaukee channel, or however we want to call it. And then if commissioners are in Hawaii and they still want to attend, they can still attend. You know what I mean? I mean, I think there's a great way to be able to make this a hybrid situation.
Yeah, and I just want to express that opens the door for other commissioners, future commissioners who have children or single parents who, work multiple jobs, whatever. There's an opportunity to allow more people to engage in this. And I think, Greg, to your point, that we can still have the, intent that the commission is at the dais as much as is possible. But the real benefit is also that the public can engage in this way, and they don't have to be present at the meeting in order to. So just add that in there.
It's been a phenomenal way, I think, to break down some of those barriers. I have sat in on more city council meetings in the last 6 months than in the previous years prior to that, because it's just like, oh, it's, council's on, let me turn it on. I think Commissioner Loosevelt, your point is well taken.
Yeah, I would agree with, all of that discussion about more opportunity for people to participate, both as commissioners and as participants from the community. But I also echo what Greg talked about, is that some people are not going to be comfortable with Zooming, and they kind of want to go to a room and do their thing. And when they do that, I want them to see a commissioner or two or three or whatever it turns out to be, but I want them to have a commissioner there hearing them in person, if that's what they choose to do. So, yeah, I think that we can make a hybrid solution work. Yeah. But does that need to be in the bylaws? That's the question I think that Lauren originally brought up.
No, but I think that's a great question to ask council maybe during our discussion that we have with them. And one of the, so I will give you an example. When Councilor Powers was pregnant, right? And she couldn't make it into the meetings, or when other councilors couldn't make it into the meetings, they put her over the phone, right? So we know that that's legal or within some sort of parameters of legality. I can't see how others participating electronically on a TV screen via Zoom could not be legal as well and still constitute majority. And so maybe Justin has to work something out with that. Maybe, does it have an issue with electronics and the way that the state law reads and how people can vote? I do not know, but that would be a great thing to bring up to council if Justin, of course, has the time on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve to work this out for us.
Well, on an immediate note, I will note that we tried a hybrid meeting at council and it was a dismal failure. So while the technology is great, it's not perfect yet. I don't know whether we want to specify its availability now or put it in any bylaws. That's of course for you to decide. And I do believe as time marches on, the public meetings law, to the extent it doesn't cover that stuff specifically, I think it will change depending on what happens in the future. But you need to be careful just because the opportunity is there to use technology for something doesn't always make it the best path on a regular basis.
Right. And I think that it would have to be trying to understand exactly what that might look like, because if you have half of the planning commissioners at the dais and then half of them on Zoom, how are they being projected? How is it? So it's kind of working through the technical aspects of it to understand how that hybrid might actually work. Because I like the idea of giving people that flexibility if they're not able to attend the meetings, but just exactly, I don't know technically how that would work. And maybe that's for somebody obviously more technically savvy than me to figure out, but I think maybe, and I don't know how you all feel about this, maybe not putting it in the bylaws at this time, but continuing to have this conversation, knowing that we want to work on this and trying to understand what that might look like and how it would function. Because
Could we make it a goal for 2021?
I mean, Greg, I was just thinking to that question. I would imagine that as we come back to quote unquote normal life, we will be trying this, right? We will be having some people showing up. We'll probably still have Zoom. We'll be working through some of this. And so maybe it is an opportunity to say, let's take this up in a year to figure out how to integrate it into the bylaws after we literally do some exploration. It does seem that where you would maybe, and obviously Justin would probably be more the expert here, where you would integrate it would be on our packet. It's like page 10. There's a description of what our meetings are, and then there's a description directly below about what quorum is. And it only uses the word for quorum. It only talks about commissioners being present. It's not saying present in person. So I think we could kind of work through that, and I think we could also maybe think about an intentionality. Chair Massey, to your point of maybe the Zoom is reserved for those emergency instances for commissioners, but the expectation is, kind of clear and transparent about being in person. But all of that is a way to say maybe we work at it and we try it out first and we sandbox it before making some of those changes.
Well, yeah, I agree. But let me just tell you, someone has figured this out already. I mean, there's got to be an answer out there. and we just need to find it and copy it. And so I think it's doable. Yeah.
If the federal government can do it, holy cow, so can we.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have sat as being the one planning commissioner that was in that room, and Vera's been in that room. It's weird. There's a weird audio kind of delay thing that kind of happens, and it is a little funky. You get used to it after a while, kind of. But I like it for the fact that it allows more people that may not be able to get down to City Hall to be able to give public testimony in person because maybe they missed the opportunity to send in a written notice or maybe they didn't hear about it until their neighbor said something to them that night or something like that. Or they're pregnant or they're unable to drive or whatever it is, it would be great or ride the bus or ride their bicycle. So it'd be great to be able to allow more public to give testimony as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that idea. So we'll keep it on the discussion docket, and maybe we can do a little bit of research about how, if anybody's been trying these things out and how they might be working. Keep talking about it. Okay.
Any other discussion of bylaw issues? And we thought that one's going to be a simple one. Yeah.
So can I just ask, did we drop the DLC meeting once a year? Was that ever in the bylaws?
That I don't know the answer to. Justin, I mean, do you have any recollection of that being dropped at any time, or maybe that was before your time?
Yeah, I have zero recollection.
I remember this is kind of, and maybe it was 2 years or so ago or 3 years or so ago, we decided, you know what, we never had these meetings with the poor DLC, probably because their chair was so tremendously dynamic and wonderful to listen to. So, it was just, we may have wiped it out back then, or it may never actually have been in there. I can't remember how that all worked out, but.
I
I
can
think
ask.
my report was the last report we heard. So
Right?
that would have been like 3 years ago, or how many kids ago was that? Like 2?
Okay. So do the commissioners or staff have any other business issues or updates?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just trying to make it till 9:59 for Vice Chair Roosevelt. No, I just wanted to let you know, happy birthday, everybody. The Planning Commission was established on November 28th in 1938. So just want to say happy birthday. And I want you guys to think about what our 100-year celebration will be in 2038 for those of you who will still be around. And so think big about the party. So happy birthday, everybody.
Woohoo! We should have little party hats.
Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Hammer, I was afraid you were gonna like start a filibuster or something for a second. I just wanted to tell you thank you actually for connecting me with your friend as I'm doing some historical research. Greg has been a resource as I've been tromping around the history of Milwaukee. So if anybody else is interested in things like that, he's a great guy. He knows a lot of other great people that can help you dig deep into the history. So thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, and thank you for reaching out. And like I said, if anybody, even though the museum is closed, we are still available via email or my telephone number, and we're happy to get back to you and do whatever we can to help.
I just thought of a new bylaw. No filibusters. Ever.
Okay. Okay, so do the commissioners have any other items for discussion? Okay.
Just that the Blue Ribbon Committee website launched last week. And so once you're done with the comprehensive plan one, you can go right on into the Blue Ribbon City Hall one and spread the word. So when you get those emails, spread them out to all your friends and your fellow Milwaukee residents that you know, and see what you can do to encourage to participate.
Okay. So Laura, next on the agenda is a review for future meetings, but have we covered it all?
Well, I know for December 8th, obviously the Waverly is coming back, and then we're going to talk more about the emergency housing code that Vera had brought last time. Then hopefully we'll have time. There's 2 discussions, just updates from Brett regarding the Central Milwaukee Bikeways concept plan and the work that he's been doing on the Title 18 flood hazard regulations. So, but I think that we also will need to be either talk about them in a short amount of time because the, testimony, it might go long that night, or have to think about moving those to another session, but we can just play that by ear. And then on the 12th is the continued public hearing for Waverly. And then once again, Vera, I think, is going to come back and talk to you all about code for the comp plan implementation. And then right now we don't have anything scheduled for the 26th. So that's kind of what it's looking like now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Did you say the 12th, Laura, is the next meeting?
No, the next meeting is the 8th.
8th, okay.
But then
Okay.
in January, then we skip our second meeting in December, and the first meeting in January is the 12th.
Okay.
And possibly also the 19th with City Council, correct?
Yes, that is correct. 19th. Sorry, thank you for that reminder. It wasn't on my forecast. So yeah, the 19th.
Okay.
Got it.
All right.
So before we go, 2020 has been a challenging year on a lot of fronts, and but I think at least I still have something to be grateful for, and what I'm grateful for is working with such a dedicated and bright group of colleagues on the commission and the city staff, and so I want to thank you for that. I am thankful for that, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Oh, come
I
on.
second.
Did I get a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a second. Boy, they're in the filibuster mode, I guess. Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving,
Happy
everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Happy
thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Night, everyone.